All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Because Football podcast. This is your host, Coach Andrew. And I'm joined today by Sharif Saber. Sharif is the head women's soccer coach at the University of South Carolina at Upstate. It's a Division I program. And Sharif and I, we go way back. We've known each other way back to the Westchester United, like pre-Penn Fusion travel coaching days. And it's been great to see his trajectory as a coach and see him share his talents and his skills at increasingly higher levels. So really pleased to sit down with him today. So Sharif, first of all, thank you very much.
No, it's always great catching up with an old friend.
Awesome. So I guess the first thing here, talking about the past a little bit, could you tell some of your earliest experiences of this great game of soccer that you can remember?
So there's two memories that stand out really strong for me. One is 1994, the World Cup. My family owned a restaurant in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. And when your family owns restaurants, you're working over the summer. And I'd work 8-hour shifts, 10-hour shifts, bussing tables, cooking, whatever was required. My only breaks that summer were to watch Nigeria or to watch Brazil play. So nobody rooted for those teams more than I did. And when Brazil got to the final, I was so happy because that just gave me more breaks throughout the summer. The other big one was when Egypt held the U-17 World Cup. And I went to Cairo Stadium, and there's 120,000 people in there.
Wow.
And when Egypt scored that first goal, it erupted. It was the loudest I've ever heard a stadium, and I've been in search of that same noise level since.
Wow, 120,000?
120. I'm pretty sure there was more in there.
Wow. Yeah, that's official numbers, but that's unbelievable. Yeah, you can't find that too much for sure. That's amazing. That's wild. Do you remember any of from that U-17, maybe any of the future stars that you saw play there? I'm just curious.
When you're still a kid and you're just enamored by the environment, what I remember is the first goal happening and thinking the stadium was going to fall apart because you could feel it. Like, I've never been in an environment before, and you and I, we're from Philly. We've been to Eagles games. We've been to Phillies games. Yeah. We know a lovely environment. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But when 120,000 people get off their feet, you can literally feel the air get sucked out of the stadium, and you feel like there's an earthquake underneath you. It was amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
Crazy. Yeah. And it's, soccer, one of the few things that can create that kind of impact. I mean, I've been to Penn State football games, and that's roughly, I think it's 105-ish, close to there. I think after Ann Arbor, it's the second biggest. And I've been to those games, and it's still big, but you don't quite get the same. I can't imagine, especially seeing Egypt in Egypt, that's massive. So very, very cool experience. So what kind of then kind of went from, experiencing the game like that and watching as a kid to then eventually getting more into coaching and thinking all right, I think that this is something that could be for me.
So every time we go to Egypt, not to go back to Egypt, but every time we'd go over, we'd play pickup in the streets, grab 4 rocks, grab a ball, the ball popped, you stuff it with a rag, get some duct tape, and you're playing. Well, I was never very good, as you are fully aware of this. I am not a technician of the game. My brain does a lot more than what my body's capable of. So when I was 15, I started coaching. And I started coaching my sister's rec team because over in Boyertown Soccer Club, so shout out to Boyertown Soccer Club, my original club. They gave my mom the head coaching job because I was too young to do it. And that was where my career started, just coaching rec at as a 15-year-old.
That's awesome. I'm sure that's one of the toughest coaching jobs you can get too, is coaching your little sister, Talk about squad management.
Yeah. And there's some stories. So I'll share a quick story. And this was one of the greatest life lessons I've ever learned in coaching. And for any coaches out there, I'm sorry for what I'm about to tell your players. But the mythology of coaching is we actually have power. So fast forward, my sister's original rec team becomes a travel B team. And I used to be that young coach. This is 20 years ago. We're going to run. We're going to do sprints. Then we're going to start training. Like I was the hard-nosed Bobby Knight of Eastern Pennsylvania soccer.
Yeah.
Well, my sister's team refused to run the one day. Typical young coach. What do you mean you're not going to run? You're all going to get benched.
But I said so.
Yes. So they sat down. And I realized in that moment I had no power. That it was all just an illusion. That if the entire team decides not to do something, there's nothing you can do as a coach. So that was one of the greatest life lessons, one of the greatest coaching lessons I could have learned ever. And the fact that I learned that at 18, I'm so blessed for it. So when you say, what's it like coaching your sister? If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be the coach I am today because she led the revolt.
Yeah. Yeah, that humbling experience. I help you pierce the veil a little bit and see kind of the truth. That's those, I agree. There's a lot of those moments as a coach when you realize that, you're doing so much, you're putting so much energy and time, so much thought, thinking of 17 different angles and scenarios and things like that. And then you get hit with a really fundamental, hard truth like that. They just don't want to go. But I think it really speaks to, the human side of coaching, which I think if you look at the higher and higher levels you go, I think at least what I've seen from like a coaching education side, from just like content that people put out, everybody's got their, tactical videos where they're breaking down things or, the various like really extensive training methods and all these things. Right. But at the end of the day, I think it comes back to kind of like just that human relationship between the coach and the player. And that's something that like seeing you and meeting you coaching, we're coaching like U11, U12 girls when we first met and even doing younger for camps and things like that. What do you think is something that like you learned from those younger ages that then you've been able to apply and even lower level or at playing like lower travel teams and things that then you've been able to apply at, multiple levels of like the NCAA coaching level?
So one of the phrases we use here with our athletes at Division I is you're an ordinary person with extraordinary talent. And that is a key philosophy of ours. A lot of times in professional ranks, college ranks, you see, especially through the media, you see these expectations on these kids that they're supposed to be superhuman. That not only you're supposed to be an elite athlete, you have to be a perfect person. You have to be perfect with the media. You have to be perfect with your teammates. You have to be perfect out in public. You have to be perfect. That's not real. We all get up in the morning. We brush our teeth. A couple days, we stub our toe. We crack an egg. It breaks on the side of the pan. Our environment here at Upstate and my philosophy since what you mentioned, like when we were coaching U9s and 8s, regardless of the level, if we don't take care of the human, we're never going to see the best athlete. Because all of us in every walk of life, your mental health, your physical health, your relationships, those come first, whether you like it or not. It's not a switch you can just put on or off. So to ignore it and just tell a kid, oh, you got to work through it or you got to toughen up. Yes, there's moments where you have to prioritize. Yes, there's moments where you have to be able to compartmentalize. But the idea that that's an on and off switch is unrealistic. And I think it leads to a lot of players quitting because they're not humanized. They're like a pawn. So for us, we try to inject the humanity into our program.
Yeah, that's awesome. And something I've been trying to think more about recently in my coaching career. I mean, when we first met and when I started, I was all about like at the time, like just the term rondo was just like shaking up the coaching. Everybody's like rondos, rondo, and like absolutely like super valid, but like there was so much more focus on the methods, and we want to be like Barcelona, just pinging the ball. And even if you look at that example of what Barcelona gave to the world, like those are guys who had relationships since they were like 12 years old, a lot of them. Like it was such a special thing. And I think that the human side of that created the potential to be like so great and world beating and historic as well.
But if I can jump in real quick, the other thing it did, the 2008 to 2011 Guardiola Barca team was a reflection of their talent. Xavi's Barca now is not Pep's Barca then. So when you're building out systems, Your systems have to revolve around the human, have to revolve around the talent level, around the skill sets. We can all line up in a 4-3-3 and it looks radically different. Mourinho's 4-3-3 looked really different at Chelsea than Pep's 4-3-3 at Barca. So the formation doesn't dictate the style of play, the coaching methodologies, which there's many of, along with the players.
Mm-hmm.
The players' skill set. So our job as coaches, and one of the things I think you, excuse me, one of the things I think you do really well is you take your players' strengths, and that's how you apply your coaching. It's one of the things I've always admired about you over the years. You don't have one of these, this is what we're going to do. Yeah, we all did when we're younger. Mm-hmm. But as we get older, it's, this is what you're really good at. We're going to lean into that. And then we're going to keep improving your weaknesses until they become your strengths. So that's just, it's one of the things I've always admired about you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And that's definitely been a journey. Like in the past 3 years, I've had like 11v11 teams. We played 4-1-4-1. I've had teams where we played 4-3-3. And then you got to switch to like 7v7. I was actually just having a conversation with a family from like my 7v7 girls team. Next year, they're going to be 9v9. And the dad's like, so what do you think? Like I'm not going to be the coach, so I'm just like projecting and conjecturing here. So like, what do you think the formation is going to be? And I was like, basically went through like 3 different options. I'm like, it really just depends. Like what the coach is looking for. You have to take, like, if I look at that age group, these are all kids who are like really going to struggle to cover the field their first for the fall season, at least, like making that jump. Like a lot of them still got legs like this, right? Like they're really going to struggle. So then maybe, how does that affect how you play, right? And the formation you're setting up. But to your point, you definitely have to look at what you have. Because even though as coaches, we're in the process of developing and transforming our players, how they're coming to us with where they're at, their natural kind of tendencies and skill set is going to be so much more influential and impactful than like what we can accomplish even just in a 2-3 month period or over the course of years. Even it's rare that you get a player who like completely changes kind of their style and things. So, but I kind of want to backtrack a little bit when you're talking about, even how you look at your players at your program and kind of push that back onto you as far as like when it comes to your like personal life. Cause I know just being friends with you for a while, like the journey that you've been on and like the like innumerable number of sacrifices and risks you've taken, probably from, initially being like a high school teacher and deciding to leave teaching and going into full-time coaching. I know you were driving for like over an hour each way just to come coach at Westchester because that was like a club where you saw potential and an opportunity. And then that just kind of went to the next step with, between PSU Brandywine and then to Kutztown and then down to Mount Olive and now upstate. So I know there's been a lot of sacrifices. So can you talk us through a little bit of that like type of mindset or that like type of process for you that kind of has led you to make all of these decisions?
So part of it is an obsession. So anybody who talks about coaching, it's not a gift. It's a lot of times it's an obsession. Those of us in the profession know that. Those of us that are lucky enough to have partners who understand that, thank you.
Yeah.
Every husband and wife out there, fiance, girlfriend, boyfriend, who tolerates us, who puts up with us, who encourages us. So big shout out to all of you. So that's actually one area that could be a potential sacrifice for some coaches. Thankfully, I always had a really good support system from friends, family, obviously now my fiance, who's absolutely amazing. Hi, Britt. The journey from Pennsylvania to North Carolina, leaving Penn Fusion, where I was an assistant at Kutztown, where the season I was there, we were number 1 in the country. We had an All-American, we had a couple All-Americans, all-region players. We were stacked going into 2018. There was no reason to leave other than when I interviewed at Mount Olive, it was one of those moments in my life where I'm like, okay, if I do this, I need to do it now. And it was the same feeling I had when you mentioned earlier when I left teaching. The story I always tell people is I owe a teacher who I told her out of privacy, I won't share her name. There was a teacher when I was a middle school coach at Ole Valley Middle School. I was the Kutztown High School head coach. And so on my screen in the background, I'm breaking down, ironically enough, Barcelona's film to clip with my high school film to give them some basic positional ideas. And I'm grading out my 7th grade geography test. I think it was like Africa at the time. By the way, nobody knows the Nile goes north. It's sad. So I'm grading out my exams, and she walks in and she goes, "What are you doing?" Grading exams. What do you mean? What am I doing? She's like, "You clearly want to be a coach." I'm like, "Do you think I can't teach?" And she starts laughing. She's like, "No, you can teach." She's like, "You're a very good teacher, but this is a passion of yours, and you need to pursue it when you're young." So I went from making $55,000 a year to 12 when I joined Penn Fusion. I had to move back home. Well, it was Westchester at the time, as you alluded to. I had to do programming work. They gave me like the 3rd or 4th level team.
Yep. Camps, everything extra you could.
Everything. Anything I could do for a paycheck, I was doing, including part-time stuff, under the table, on the side, like we all do at that age. And Tino and Mark saw my progress. They were very supportive. Shane Coyne at the time was very supportive. And Chris Edwards eventually later, they moved me up at Penn Fusion. And as I moved up at Penn Fusion and I was able to start making a living, I then started volunteering. I volunteered at Immaculata University for a season. And after that season at Immaculata, I'm like, okay, I think I'm ready. And then the position that changed everything for me on the college side was Penn State Brandywine. A brand new program. Didn't field a game, didn't field a team. And they hired me in May, and we started up in August. And our first team had 3 soccer players on it. So that was fun. That was a great learning experience there.
Yeah, I basically remember you talking about like you're hanging out on campus trying to grab any girl who can tie her shoes basically and chew gum at the same time just to field a team. But then within a very short period of time, you guys are at your level competing nationally, multiple All-Americans. Like, how did you go from absolute scratch to kind of hitting that type of level in such a quick period of time?
Well, big shout out goes to Richard Laudenschlager and to Takia Thomas. They were my assistants there. My salary as the head coach was $5,000 for the year. And we showed up every day, and Rick and Takia were sharing a stipend of like $3,000. And we showed up every day and treated it like a 9-to-5 job when we could around our regular jobs. I do my Penn Fusion work from inside the Penn State Brandywine coach's office, and we would just grind. High school games, club games, tournaments that we know college coaches aren't going to be at, EDP, everything we could go to, we lived on the road. And we had enough families and players trust us and believe in the process that we went from, and ironically enough, that first year we did make the conference championship game with those non-soccer players. Again, big shout out to T and Rick for all their teaching abilities. But then the next year we jumped to number 8 in the country, where we brought in a freshman class that was just full of studs, full of players that were not only really good soccer players, more importantly, had the mindset of, oh, this is brand new. Oh, we can do things that nobody else ever did before.
Yeah.
We're in, let's do this. And it never hurts that you can sell a Penn State degree.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, just amazing. And they're obviously, finally getting a shot at Mount Olive and now at Upstate. I know, every school you're going into, it has different strengths, right? And it will appeal to different type of student and different type of athlete. But I think what you just said there, kind of shadowing to your first like real official class at Penn State Brandywine was like players who kind of saw, okay, it's a new opportunity. We can kind of create this and be kind of like the founders of this program and of this culture and stuff. And to me, that speaks to like vision, right? That speaks to a larger vision that you were able to create among your coaching staff and crystallize and then be able to communicate it to potential players. So how does that kind of go from the recruiting angle? Because obviously you're trying to get people who are the right fit. If you are not being extremely, like, let's say, authentic, or you're kind of representing the school in certain ways, you're going to have a lot of disillusioned, unhappy players who it's even more common than ever now that will transfer out. And then that's a lot of like time and energy you put in that kind of doesn't pan out. But how do you take like that vision from a potential recruit, but then also spread that to the rest of your program? Like, how do you guys hold and maintain that vision among your team?
By being authentic. It's really that simple. When we're on recruit calls, when I'm talking to recruits, when they visit, whether it was at Penn State Brandywine, I was helping Eric at Kutztown, Mount Olive, or here at Upstate now, the thing I always preach to them is I'm never going to be who I'm not. It is what I'm telling you now is what you're going to walk into later. We let them meet the players. We let them meet every support staff. We show them everything we do with our training calendars and our lifting programs. They know our program, whether they commit here or not, because there's no secrets. We tell them all the time, if you want to talk to the third string goalkeeper, you can talk to her. You can talk to the player that got 10 minutes, or you can talk to the All-American. I have no issues and no lack of trust of anybody in my program because of what we talked about earlier. There's a separation in our programs that have run consistently through of separating the person from the student from the athlete. So in our program, there'd be 3 Andrews. Andrew, first, the human being. How is your mental health, your physical health? How's your family doing? Then, how are we doing academically? What's your GPA? What are you looking to graduate with? Are you on track to graduate on time? What's your relationship like with your professors? Once we take care of those 2, now Andrew, the player, meets Coach Sharif. And we have a very professional conversation about how we see you developing, where we see you short-term, long-term, and we also educate on timelines. So one of the things that you do at Transform Soccer is technical training. Yep. To all the players out there and the parents who are watching, technical training does not happen in 4 weeks. You can get a little bit better. You can improve, especially if you're very raw, but it takes time. And the hardest thing that we have as coaches, as educators, is getting a young person to understand that they have to commit consistent, organized time, not, okay, 1 week I'll do it twice, 1 week I'll do it once. I'm going to take a break for this week, or I'm going hard 5 times this week, so I should be better in 2 weeks. It's consistency over time with an active plan. So once you combine all that, the players who leave our program are usually looking for extra playing time, which is absolutely fine. We don't begrudge anybody that. That is their right, and we support them. Or it's major issues or family issues, things like that. But there's very, very, very rarely in my over 21 years of coaching, it's a personal breakdown. And if there was a full disclosure early on, it was my fault. That was a young coach learning, which unfortunately I don't think enough of us realize we are human as well.
Human being, it's a lot of responsibility, and certainly taking that holistic approach, and feeling a level of responsibility for setting people on the right path, or at least being able to support them in those areas. But like you were saying earlier, throwing it all the way back to your younger sister's team, like the coach, yes, we do have a lot of power and influence, but then it only goes so far. There are certain points where it just falls away. So that's where like your team, your program culture, the leaders, the attitude you have in your team is there. And for me, at least, I've never been in the process of trying to start a new program from scratch in that kind of sense, taking over from someone where there's a totally different system, culture, whatever it was, philosophy, personality, communication styles, expectations, and then setting your own. So what's like a sign? Could you give an indicator, a sign for you, like when you're working with a team, and really every year you have a new team, right? Even if you've been in the program, obviously that you do less work up front for it. It's a little smoother transition, but it really is different every season, which is a challenge of coaching.
Yep.
So what are some indicators or signs you see, like from your players, from your student athletes, that are like, okay, they're starting to get it. Okay, like what I've been saying, the vision I've been holding is now being embraced?
That's a great question. One is active learning. Whether it's the youth level, whether it's the high school level, the college level, I know they're buying into our culture, and in our culture, a lot of that is individual responsibility and actively participating. It's when they start asking questions. Because when a student athlete or an athlete comes into their coach's office and asks questions, there's a lot of things that I think get overlooked. One, there's a level of trust there. You're not going to come open up about your insecurities or ask questions if you don't have a level of trust and respect.
Absolutely.
Second, they're actively participating. You mentioned the portal earlier. For years, and you've heard these horror stories about players wanting to talk to the coach and the coach saying, "Oh, you figure it out," or you. When a player opens up to ask questions, that is the golden learning moment. They are telling you, "I'm open, I'm hearing you." Now it goes down to those, like you said earlier, how do I communicate with this individual? Some are visual. Some need a kick up the butt. Some need an arm around the shoulder. Some need an action plan. So now we have to identify that communication. So that's number one, the active learning. The second, it's the small moments at training or after training or during matches when a teammate makes a mistake.
Yeah.
It's the small moments like water breaks. I know my culture's right when I have one or two groups at a water break, not 7, 8. I know my culture's right when a teammate makes a mistake and somebody doesn't scream at them, they educate them, they support them, they challenge them. It's those moments of adversity. That's when we know whether the culture's right or not. There's been moments where my teams have won 10, 11 games in a row to start the season, and I knew the culture wasn't right, but to the world it looked perfect because you're winning, and winning, as John Madden said, is the best deodorant. So it's those moments that's hard to see from the outside that we know when it's right.
Excellent. That's an interesting point you make. Like obviously about the relationships or the reactions when mistakes happen and things like that, and kind of showing that that's a sign of a culture where everybody's kind of in a learning type of mindset. Obviously want to win and perform well, but in learning. And then to your point too, like creating that level of trust with a player when they're interested enough, like and engaged enough, because it's very easy. I feel like, silence is a big red flag in many cases. Obviously some people are quiet and more introverted, but and consistently, like if you're seeing no changes in a player and they haven't brought anything up about it and they're not saying anything like that, that can really be a red flag that we want to kind of keep an eye on. So it's interesting you say just like that willingness to be open and ask questions and try to learn. So I think that's
for the record, that's also on the coaching staff. You mentioned a perfect example of the quiet kid. This year, we had a couple freshmen who were very quiet. They were just, the environment was new, but you could tell they were actively engaged by the way they were paying attention, their body language. So then it became, for us as coaches, how do we build this trust higher for them? Going up to them before training or after training or ask them, come in the office, hey, how do you need me to communicate with you? What environment do you feel comfortable in? 2 or 3 of them are like, oh, this is great. I've never had a coach pull me in and just ask me. One of them went, I just need you to coach me. I'm good. And we have a great relationship, but that's just what she
Leave me alone, bro.
Yeah, literally, leave me alone. I'm going to go do my thing. I love you. I'm out. It's great. It's one of the things I love about coaching is every individual is different. And it's not a bad thing. It is a blessing.
Yeah. Awesome. And speaking to that, even though there are differences, what are some things you look for in a player, when you're out there like recruiting and looking to add to your group? Like, are there certain things you see on the field, obviously, but then as you just look as the total package of them as a person and as a student?
So because of all my years of coaching at all the different levels you and I have been at, it doesn't take us really long to identify the level of a player. What takes us a while is to identify the level of the character. So if we're sitting at a field, I can see a really fast player. I can see a powerful player. I can see a technical player who's good at holding the ball up under pressure, who distributes well, who can receive and turn on their back foot, finish, cross, 1v1, all of that, distribute out of the goal. What is harder to see is the character. It's, okay, what's the score of this game? Or is your team up and you're sprinting because you feel good because you just scored a goal? Or did you just miss a PK and now you're making a 60-yard sprint back to help a teammate? We're also watching after the game. Do you immediately jump on your phone and ignore your teammates? Are you walking with your teammates? Are you standing talking negative about teammates? Do mom and dad immediately come over and pick up your bag and you think that you're special?
Yeah, it's a big one.
Whenever we hold our ID camps, I tell kids all the time, in a perfect world, I watch you from the time you get out of the car to the moment you get back in the car. And everything in between you do. Because the in-between is what I'm dealing with 24 hours a day, 7 days a week as your college coach.
Mm-hmm.
There's this illusion out there that the only time we interact with players is on the field. That is the smallest percentage of our interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Bus rides, academic meetings, individual mental health meetings, just checking on you, making sure you're good. Just coming and doing film, community service. That is the majority of our time together. It is not you on a training field with me.
Yeah.
So finding out who you are solves 90% of my problems. And if we get the person right, it's very rare we get the athlete wrong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. I think those little indicators are huge, but it's challenging, right? Because do you feel like you need a certain, I mean, I guess in certain cases you see somebody one time and you get a sense, but you kind of need to have a sample size, right? You kind of need to have a couple opportunities, which can be challenging to physically be in a place and watching. You probably got X dozens of players on your list. What is something, I know I talk with a lot of players who are looking to make this step to college, and families, and like huge thing now because of the access to technology we have, and like game film is like the highlight videos, right? And like, what should I put on there? What kind of pump up music? Coach, what's your favorite kind of music? Like what should we put on there? And they want to use that. Obviously it's an important tool to get to the coach to know them and things like that. I know that there's a million, services out there that will help, players put that together and things, but is there anything, whether it's communicating to a coach by email, showing interest on the highlight video, like what do you think players should put some attention and focus into if they want to kind of get their character and their personality across in that interaction?
The highlight video and the email really aren't the place. So as college coaches, we get 150, 200 emails a day. Usually 75, 80, 100 of them are from either agencies overseas or coaches or directors or players. So that initial email needs to be name, GPA, interest at major, graduation year, your upcoming schedule if you see us coming to the event, the basics. We don't need to know you're in band. Don't need to know that you did community. It's all that stuff is wonderful. We first have to do our job, which is identify you as a soccer player. Because yes, we talked a lot about character, but the reality of the business is the first thing I'm going to notice is your technical ability and your decision-making and your athleticism. So the highlight video itself, highlight what position you want me to actually coach you in. So if you're a center back, I don't need to see 7 tap-in goals as your beginning highlights. If you're a forward, you don't just have to show me a tap-in when I can see in the background the score's 21-0. Show me what skills you feel are your best and put it in a 2 to 3 minute video. The music, I know there's some coaches that are, oh, I like this or I like that. Just don't bore me with it. I love every genre.
And for the record, for everybody, what would bore you?
What would bore me? Classical. I actually had that.
Oh, man.
I love classical music. But it's not
jive exactly.
It's not even that it doesn't jive. They actually did a really good job editing it. It's the fact that it was like video 40 and it was late in the evening and I'm watching it. I'm like,
and you're like, starting to go.
Exactly.
Yeah. This Vivaldi is really knocking me out. Yeah.
All of those, the question you asked is, when does the character reveal itself? When you're playing, there's an element of that. When we're getting to know each other, texting, when we're getting to know each other through the phone calls, your visits. Also, one of the things that we do maybe is a little different. we don't often call your club coach. I don't want to talk to your club coach because 99 out of 100 times your club coach or your director is going to tell me good things because your parents are paying them to tell me good things. So I will call somebody who I trust on the other team you just played last week. Hey, do you remember so-and-so? Do you remember the little winger? Do you remember the center back? Yeah, I remember. What do you remember specifically? There's been players that if their GPA is low and they're telling us they're having family issues, we'll call the school and ask to talk to a teacher if they give us permission. We'll talk to a guidance counselor. We'll talk to people who are actually invested in them as people and who don't have direct biases towards them, along with the process itself. The process tells us everything. If you're active, if you show real interest, your family shows real interest, that tells us an element of your character. If you're talking to 15 different schools telling us we're all number one, it's a very small community.
Yeah.
We all know each other. We all talk. We all talk about recruits. So don't ever assume if you're talking to school A and B that school C and D don't know.
Gotcha.
So combining all of those elements, it generates a level of character that we project until we actually get the player here on campus and then the program.
Wow. Super valuable. And I think it speaks to like the level of care and attention that you guys take into each player, because that's, you're doing some heavy detective work for sure, to make sure you get the right fit, to make sure
I don't
that
need another assistant coach. I need a private eye.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. So really, that's awesome. That insight was great. And kind of, again, to shift it a little bit, talking obviously technical ability really stands out. And that's through Transform Soccer. We do a lot of that. We're trying to help players technically. Is that something we love to do? We're passionate about. What do you think about, like, at the college level, right? At their age, when players are 18 to 22, 23, like, is there a lot that a player can do, you think, to really improve themselves and perform? Or is it more like, obviously everything is important, right? From off the field habits, sleep, nutrition, their gym routine things, but like, where do you kind of see the place for that technical training at a Division I college level?
So what you just said, I want to take a little step back. All of that plays into the technical. The bigger you are, the stronger you are. And I don't mean big as in height. I mean strong, quick, fast, explosive. The better your stamina allows you to train longer at a higher level. The more explosive you are changes your technical ability because now you're able to generate space faster. Your strength allows you to drive a ball further, which now allows you a different tactical idea. So the physical transformation is usually at Division I, one of the biggest parts. Okay. So if you're a young player right now listening to this, if you're a high school freshman, sophomore, get in the gym. Get in the gym. The gym will help your technical. There's never been an athlete who's too athletic-y. There's nobody who has too much athleticism. Then you take that athleticism and then you now mold in your technical because it impacts each one. Each one impacts itself. So for us, we are constantly having to retrain the technical because regardless of ECNL, the GA, because of the physical, because the game's so much faster, players are able to press for 90 minutes because they're so much more athletic and cover ground. You now are operating technically under pressure instead of maybe 2 minutes a game, 15 minutes a game, 20 minutes a game, which now changes the whole way we have to train them technically. So to the younger players on this podcast, to the families that have 7s, 8s, 9s, they need to live with a ball. If your child is not living with a ball, your child likes soccer, doesn't love it, let them enjoy it in a fun space. If they love a ball, help them with that passion. Help them learn how to be technical under pressure. Too much training is technical as far as, I can be technical dribbling and there's no pressure. Heck, I can receive a ball under no pressure. Can you do it when there's somebody shoving you in the back? Can you do it when your two teammates are covered and now you have to turn out and create space to possess the ball? That's the element of the technical side that is often overlooked at the youth side, because the physical transformation changes the game. It's just like when you watch players go from the championship to the Premier League. It's bigger, it's faster, it's quicker, it's more technical. They were great in the championship. Now they're very average, or they can't hang in the Premiership.
Right.
The pace, the skill levels, everything of the game have changed. So
yeah.
definitely get on the ball, definitely train under pressure.
Yeah, I think even one thing that always sticks out to me with players is like when players that are at that like 11, 12, 13, at various stages of like their growth, right? When they're in puberty, and they're like all of a sudden in a month they grow like 2-3 inches, right? And I've seen players that like they went from being super technical, really good on the ball, to now they like look like Bambi on skates, right?
Yeah.
Because like they're just trying to adapt. So it speaks to like the impact of the physical. And I think it's an interesting point you make, is making decisions under pressure, right? And so it's always like a challenge with players of just getting them proficient, just getting the muscle memory of the skill first, which really, coach, we introduce. And then for a lot of players, it's like, now you just need to do it 50, 100 times every day at home or whatever it is, right? And then we can add in that. And also the decision making, I think, because I think you made a good point of like, okay, now you're stronger, you can drive a ball farther. It opens up a new tactical decision, right? So if you're a center back, when before it wasn't really an option, we playing like a weak side ball to your weak side winger in behind or something, you had to just drop it into the striker or whatever it was. Now we've got new options. So I think that's an interesting way of looking at how kind of all those things can impact each other.
So when again, going back to Westchester and Penn Fusion, when I coached the nines, the thing I would tell the parents all the time is, obviously winning at this level doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter tactically if your child knows what to do if technically they can't do it.
Yeah.
It's like knowing how to drive a car. Sorry, it's like knowing the rules of the road, but you can't drive the car.
Yeah.
So for us, it's the technical piece is the how. How do I find that open teammate? How do I drive that ball? How do I solve this problem? The why is the tactical. So you got to solve the how before the why. And then at our level, we got to do both.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Cool. This has been fantastic. A lot of great nuggets for, I think, multiple ages, multiple levels of players. I guess two final things. One, who do you think, whether it's someone you knew or just someone from watching, like who's influenced your perspective on coaching and on the game of soccer, the most, or who have been some of those main influences?
Believe it or not, it's been my players. My players have changed my perspective. First, I'm now going into my second generation, technically, of players, from millennials now to Gen Z. So there's generational shifts, which means there's communication shifts. But also, my players are the ones who are putting the blood, sweat, and tears in. My players are the ones making the biggest sacrifices. Maybe I'm just very old school. Those are the ones I'm going to listen to the most. So when my players, and we recruit really intelligent athletes, so when they come in with a well-reasoned argument or they have a solution to things, there's no better resource. They're the ones physically doing it. So yes, I would love to. Yeah, you have Pep and you have Cruyff and you have Mourinho and I can even throw in, like, I love Eric at Kutztown. He was a great friend to me. And you can throw in other coaches. If I'm being real honest, my players have had the biggest influence on me as a coach over anybody.
It's huge. Yeah. I think it speaks to, your perspective as well of being open to that feedback and wanting to really make it a process of exchange and learning, So again, thanks to your younger sister for putting you in your place. It's big. It can be a very different Sharif.
So everybody out there, listen to your siblings. That's the message from today. Your siblings are great.
There you go. All right. And to wrap it up, like we do with every guest here, please finish this sentence: because football, or because soccer, ...
Because football is passion. Everything in our sport is about passion. It is, the games are exciting. They're full of moments. The bonds off the field are love and family and support. the game itself is passion and love, and that's ironically what I love about it.
Awesome. Gotta agree. Well, thank you so much, Sharif. This was great. This was a blast, and really enjoyed it. Great to reconnect and have you share. So I really appreciate it. And everybody, we're gonna put the info for Upstate's social, so check them out and keep an eye on Coach too, and see how they do. Good luck in the upcoming season, year 2.
Thank you, sir.